You know, when it comes to fishing for panfish, especially crappie, one of the best rigs to use is called a slip bobber rig, and that's what I've got here. You can see that the float has the line going through it and it slides up and down. Now what I've done is I've added a split shot to the line just to get the jig to sink a little bit quicker, because the jig is a 1/32 ounce jig head. You can see it right there, it's pretty light. So it would take a long time to sink. So because of that, I've added that split shot. Now you'll also notice that what stops the float from going up the line is something called a bobber stop. And I've simply taken 20-pound braided line. This particular line is called Dacron, and it's the same line you use for backing on, for example, fly reels or even some spinning reels. And I've tied it into a uni knot and then tightened it. So it's strong enough that it won't slide up and down the line, but if I need to, I can adjust it up and down. And then below that uni knot, what I've done is put a little bead in the line. So you can see the bead just ahead of the float. And I've done that so that the bead stops where the bobber stop is, because sometimes the knot will go inside the float, depending how big the float is. This is a very popular rig if you're fishing for panfish in shallower water, let's say less than 8 feet deep. Now when it comes to jigs and the grubs that you put on it, this is a tube jig, and I'm just going to lay it on my hand. It's a very popular plastic grub to use. This particular one is 1 1/4 inches long, and you can see it's orange with a little bit of a chartreuse tail. Now the way I've got this rigged, even though it's a tube, most fishermen will rig a tube so that it goes over the jig head, for example, when you're fishing for bass and so on. But these particular types of jig heads are designed, they have a little grub barb that you can see right there. So you actually put the tube on the hook, and then you slide the tube up tight to the jig head, and that grub barb keeps it there. So this is very popular, especially in the US, when they're using these small tubes for panfish. In addition to the tubes, some of the other popular plastics, and again I'll put them on my hand, are small twisters. So twisters in the 1 inch to 1.5 inch size, even a small crayfish, which I'll put right here, making a nice assortment on my hand. Okay, so all these work well. Colors are really important. It really depends on the day for which colors they hit. Then in addition to the plastic grubs, you can also use some of the scent impregnated baits. So what I'm holding up here are little jars of Trigger X. So you can see the front, it describes what the little grubs are and the size, and then you can see through them in the back. So there's yellow, these are orange, so they come in all different colors. Now the way you can fish these, number one, you can put them and tip them on your plastic grubs. So I could actually take one of these small little grubs, and this is the way they come, by the way, they all come together. So I can break off one small one, this would be like a small maggot grub, and I can put it right on with my tube and let it hang a little bit so it scents it, and it's like having a little bit of bait, only it's this pheromone impregnated. Okay, Trigger X, so that's on there right on the hook. Or if the fish are really finicky and the water's clear, just take your jig head like this one and then put 1 or 2 of the small Trigger X grubs on it. So believe it or not, that going in the water gives it an action of up and down. When they get close to it, they smell it and then they'll grab it. So all these baits work really well if you're fishing for panfish.